Macbeth unfolds as a chilling tragedy, beginning with the ominous prophecies of three witches that ignite Macbeth's hidden and repressed ambition for power. Upon learning he's been named Thane of Cawdor, as foretold, Macbeth's thoughts turn to the kingship, a desire fueled by his ambitious wife, Lady Macbeth, and also by the witches, which fueled his repressed desire for power to come out. She masterminds the murder of King Duncan in Act 2, framing the guards and prompting Duncan's sons to flee, leaving Macbeth to ascend the throne. However, guilt and paranoia quickly consume him. In Act 3, Macbeth arranges the murder of Banquo, fearing his lineage, but Banquo's son escapes, adding to Macbeth's unease. The banquet scene, where Macbeth hallucinates Banquo's ghost, reveals his unraveling mind. Seeking reassurance, he revisits the witches in Act 4, receiving ambiguous prophecies that give him a false sense of security which got converted into dark pride. One of that prophecy was that Macbeth can only be killed by the one who has not came out of his mother's womb. He then orders the slaughter of Macduff's family, triggering Macduff's vengeful resolve, by which he allies with the king's sons and forms an army to slay the tyrant Macbeth. Finally, in Act 5, Lady Macbeth descends into madness after Macbeth slaughtered Macduff's family, her guilt manifesting in sleepwalking and desperate attempts to cleanse imaginary blood from her hands, ultimately leading to her death. As Malcolm's army advances, using branches from Birnam Wood as camouflage, the witches' prophecies begin to materialize. Macbeth, realizing the deception, faces Macduff, who reveals he was born by cesarean, thus fulfilling the prophecy. In a final confrontation, Macduff kills Macbeth, and Malcolm restores order to Scotland, marking the end of Macbeth's tyrannical reign and the tragic consequences of unchecked and repressed ambition for power.
Now, I hope you have understood Act Macbeth. I've tried to represent it in a very simple and summarized manner. Now, let's take out some philosophical values from this particular act. Remember, this is my interpretation of Act Macbeth. You can also have your own. You have the freedom to have your own interpretation of this particular act. I'm here to share my own interpretation of this act. Let's start. First, the repressed desires. Now, the act started with Macbeth's winning a particular war, but my particular hypothesis is that Macbeth was very loyal to his king, Duncan. He was so loyal, and that is how he was. Robert Greene talks in his book,
The Laws of Human Nature,
that we all humans have a hidden desire for power, and that was the same with Nietzsche. Nietzsche also talks about it that we as humans have a hidden desire for power, and that was also the same with Macbeth because he was also a human. So, he had a fundamental desire, a hidden desire for power, but whenever this desire used to come out, because of his loyalty, he used to repress these desires. Now, this repression of that particular desire isn't mentioned, but this is my hypothesis. He kept repressing his own desire, but repressing fundamental human desires comes at a cost. It comes at the cost of madness. Whenever we repress these fundamental human desires, a sort of restlessness occurs in our life. Our peace is abducted, and that is what happened with Macbeth. He won the war, he met the three witches, and those three witches ignited his repressed desires. His wife, Lady Macbeth, did the same. Now, whenever these repressed desires come out, they come out like mad ones, and that drove Macbeth into complete madness, and then into tyranny. Now, this gives us a lesson that we shall not repress these fundamental human desires, but instead, we should channel them rather than repressing them. If we channel them, the consequences shall be good, and we'll get the thing which we all want, and that thing is power. Second, suffering. Now, Macbeth was gratified with the prophecy given by the witches that he can only be killed by the one who has not come out of his mother's womb. But, at last, Macbeth was killed by Macduff, and Macduff told Macbeth that he had not come out of his mother's womb, but instead, his mother's stomach was teared, and he came out through a cesarean. Now, this particular metaphor of tearing down the stomach and coming out can be a metaphor for suffering. Macduff was indeed going through a lot of suffering. His whole family was slaughtered by Macbeth, and he suffered so much that he had nothing to lose. That is what made him stronger. That is what made his will more stronger, And then with his strength, he was successful in achieving his goal, and that goal was slaying Macbeth.
Now, that gives us a lesson that suffering is indeed a thing which can make us stronger. And after killing Macbeth, Macduff got a sort of peace. Now, this also tells us that in times of suffering, there is also a sort of peace. In simple words, suffering is only the way to peace, and suffering is the only way to get out of restlessness. Third, destruction of morals. Now, here we have an exclusive example of Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth was so hungry for power that she was even ready to break out some moral rules of our world and our society. She was indeed hungry for murdering the king. But then, after she murdered the king, obviously, she didn't murder the king, but she did order Macbeth to kill the king. But breaking these particular morals of our society comes at the cost of guilt. Even though she wasn't the main suspect in that particular crime, but she was indeed inflicted with guilt. And we have an exclusive example of this particular philosophical take in the novel Crime and Punishment written by Fyodor Dostoevsky, where the protagonist Raskolnikov, in desire for power, in desire for extraordinariness, goes beyond those morals and kills a woman, an old woman, and because of which he was not caught for the crime, but still, he was inflicted with guilt. Now, from the character of Lady Macbeth, she was so inflicted with guilt after those tyrannical things happened. Even though she was the Queen of Denmark, she was inflicted with guilt. Now, that gives us a lesson that whoever you are, or whatever you are, whenever you go beyond some deep morals of the society, you are naturally inclined to be inflicted by some sort of guilt.